to my channel. I am Elisa, and if you've not been here before, I sew all of my fashion and my garments from scratch, and I show you how to do it in the process. I show you how to pattern draft, I show you how to sew dresses step by step. And if you're into sewing or you want to learn how to sew, then you're in the right place. So this week I actually created a A-line mini 60s style gingham dress. I know that's a lot in one sentence, with a gathered hole in the bust area, which I think looks really cool. I've had this idea a while ago because I have this great booklet here, which some of you might recognize. I bought this at Tate Modern about like 2 years ago, and I've never made anything out of it because it is really quite complicated. It's called Pattern Magic by Nakamichi. I don't know if I say that right, probably not, and I also don't know if it's a he or she, but it's a great book. And I saw this design here a while ago, and I think it's really cool. It's a dress with a gathered hole on the side, and I really like the look of this, and the process of how to achieve the pattern for it is described really quite well in here. I'm gonna see if I can find this book online, and if I do, I'm gonna put the link into the description box. The way I did it is I usually use bodice slopers that I reuse for different dresses, and I'm gonna link the tutorial for how to make one of those in the folds in the description box as well. And the way you do it basically is you take your bodice sloper and then you create a round circle in the center front area if you want to do the whole where I did it in the dress, and then you cut open the sloper and then fold it so that it kind of like fans out like this. So this is the center front, this is where the hole is. So once this is cut out in the fabric, you can gather it together, and then this is the shoulder seam, and this obviously is the armhole. And I'm gonna show you the mock-up that I've made before I actually cut out anything from my shell fabric, which is this. You can probably see what's going on here. So this is the center front. You are going to cut this on the fold so you don't actually have a seam. And then when you join this part with the other side, you have a hole here. Weave a strap through the tunnel and then pull it together, and you have a nice gathered hole. So this is how you make the pattern. For the actual dress, I used this beautiful lilac gingham cotton weave. I don't know why this has become such an obsession, but I just love lilac. It's a beautiful color. I also bought this white, it's simply a muslin or a poplin, I think. It's a cotton, it's very thin and easy to work with, and I use this to fully line the dress. So if you've never lined a dress before, you're gonna learn how to do it in this tutorial. Alright, so without further ado, let's jump into the tutorial and see you in a bit. Just a quick explainer of how to construct the rest of the pattern. You will need a bodice block pattern to build from there. In this case, I had already manipulated the shoulder dart out of the way. As I mentioned, I put a link for the bodice block drafting tutorial below. I decided for a length of 80 centimeters for the dress and measured that down at the center front, which will be cut on the fold. The circle for the hole in the bust measured about 15 centimeters in diameter, which will narrow down once gathered. I extended the width of the skirt by about 10 centimeters to give it a bit of a flare. This is what the final pattern looked like. You will have to cut this like indicated here and fan it out to achieve the width you need for the gather, as I explained in the intro. Repeat the same steps for the back of the dress. Here you can see me cutting the pieces from my shell and lining fabric. Let's start with preparing the front of the dress. First, place the shell and lining right sides facing in front of you. We are going to work on the gathered hole detail first. Pin the pieces together along the circumference of the hole. I usually pin the two end points and the center front first to make sure everything is evenly distributed. Now sew around the hole. After cutting back the seam allowance if you need to, start to nip the fabric like I do here. This will help it fold flat once we turn everything right sides out. Make sure not to cut your freshly sewn seam. Now we can turn the piece around. Give it a good press and you should have something looking like this. It is a good idea to understitch the seam allowance towards the facing to achieve a crisp edge. Place the two sides good sides facing and pin them together. You will start at the end of the lining, sewing towards the middle point where lining and shell meet, and lock the seam. Lift your presser foot and skip about 1 centimeter to create a hole for the strap to thread in later, which will gather the hole. Let your presser foot down and start again by locking your seam and sewing the rest towards the other end. Once you've done that, separate the seam allowance. You will find a little opening where your strap can later go through. Don't forget to press everything with your iron. To finish the whole detail, add another stitch around the circumference with a distance of 1.5 centimeters from the edge. All in all, you should have something looking like this. Let's close the neckline. On one end, place the good sides of your shell and lining on top of each other, folding them inwards. With your other hand, slip in between the two layers and grab that end. Pull it through. Now, trusting the process, start to pin along your neckline, creating this weird little sausage roll. Give it a straight stitch and pull everything right sides out to reveal the closed neckline. Don't forget to nip the seam allowance on the inside as we did with the hole detail to allow everything to lie flat once pressed. Moving on to the back of the dress. Close both your lining and shell in the center back, only locking the seam about 25 centimeters from the top down and sewing the part above with a long stitch length. We will open that part again after pressing. Next, place lining and shell wrong sides facing and pin the back opening as well as the neck hole together like I do here. Give everything a straight stitch. turn everything right sides out, nip the curved seam allowance of the neck hole and remove a square of it at the corners where the back opening starts. Give everything a good press. To join the front and back of the dress, you will have to pin and sew together the shoulder seams first. Place the front and back right sides together. Open the shoulders and place them together like so, making sure everything matches up. Pin and sew. Hey everybody, just checking in with you for a bit of FaceTime. So this is how far we are with the dress. It looks really good. I think we're almost there. There are just a few things left to do. So I'm gonna close off the sleeve curves, the armhole curves, like I did the neck hole. I'm gonna show you how I do that in a minute. I'm gonna shorten the lining just a little bit so I can make sure that it's not showing when I wear the dress. And then we can close the side seams, and I'm still contemplating whether or not I want to add pockets to the dress because I love pockets. I have pockets in almost all my dresses, but I'm not quite sure about this one because I want it to lie nice and flat on my body, and I'm not sure if it's going to do that when I have pockets in the dress, so I need to think about that for a minute. I just did the armhole so you get a nice and clean result and all the raw edges in your dress look neat. I'm gonna show you on this side. So I still have my raw edges here. I have my lining and my shell fabric, and we're basically going to do the same thing that we did on the collar. So I'm going to take one end of, let me show you like this. I'm gonna take one end of the armhole, so I'm gonna take this one, and then I'm facing the good sides together, so the right sides together like this. You're gonna twist it around like that, and then I go in here and grab those ends and turn it around like this, and then I start to pin the lining and the shell together. The important part here is that the shoulder seams face each other and that you fold the seam allowance open like so. And now you've created this awful looking sausage, so to speak. That's kind of like twisting and turning in all sorts of directions. But all you've got to do now is to sew a straight seam along your armhole curve, and I'm going to do that now. And now all you need to do is first grab your good scissors and nip the seam allowance, making sure you're not cutting through your seam, because that is going to help your armhole curve to fold nicely. So that's what I'm doing here. And now I'm just turning all of this around to reveal a fully lined armhole. Look at that. Here it is. And now I'm just gonna press it real nice. And then we've got that done.
To close the side seams, flip the dress inside out and pull the lining out of the shell. Place all the pieces right sides together, pin and sew. This is the time to try on the dress and make any alterations if you need them. I needed to widen the armholes and sew the body of the dress a good chunk smaller in a second go. To create the strap for the gathered hole detail, simply cut a strip of fabric 2 by 30 centimeters or so in length. Sew it along one side, I gave it 2 stitches to be sure, and turn the strap inside out with a needle and thread. If you're not sure how to do it, check out last week's video where I made a hot pink maxi dress. Grab a safety pin and thread the strap through your tunnel around the hole. Gather the fabric as you like, add a bow tie, and voila, you're done. Lastly, you will need to hem the dress. This is the point where you can shorten it to the wanted length or leave it as it is. The only important thing is to keep the lining a bit shorter than the shell to avoid it from showing when you wear the dress. I overlocked the raw edges of each the shell and lining, folded them over once and top stitched the hem down. And with that, the dress is finished. This dress is so different from what I usually make, and I love it. The length is perfect, the color is just my thing, and the gathered hole detail in the bust area gives a certain pizzazz to the otherwise simple silhouette. This dress makes me want to go to Paris really badly for some reason. The lilac gingham gives it a 1960s cottagecore country Brigitte Bardot style that I think is really cool. Let me know how you like it in the comments. I hope the instructions were clear enough so you can make the dress for yourself at home. If you do, I would love to see how it turns out. Feel free to message or tag me on Instagram so I can see what you've created. See you soon!